Hi, I'm Malachi. It's a new school year and we have a new principal. Today we sat down with Mr. Bonham to see where he's been and to see what he has planned in the future for the school year. Hi, Mr. Bonham. Thank you for joining Atown Today.
Absolutely, Malachi. Glad to be here.
Where were you before Albemarle? Where did you work?
So I won't go through my long history because I probably bore you to death, but I actually started off in Fairfax and I was at a school, W.T. Woodson, for about a dozen years. I came down here about 13 years ago and I've actually been the director of K-Tech. I was actually assistant principal at Monticello, and the last 4 years I was principal at Western.
Okay. Where are you from originally?
Salem, Virginia, right outside of Roanoke, southwestern part of the state. And then after I graduated from Salem, I did community college for a couple of years, and then transferred to JMU. And then a couple of years later, got back into education by getting certified to teach business and technology. And that's when I got my first job up in Fairfax.
Are you a tech fan?
You know, I'm a little bit more of a tech fan than a Wahoo fan, and I hate to say that. All right, I just kind of disclosed myself on air. But growing up in southwestern Virginia, tech was a little more prominent at that time. But I do root for both to some degree, which I know was kind of an odd thing to do. But
what kind of kid were you in high school? Like, what extracurriculars were you involved in?
So I, for the most part, was kind of under the radar as a kid. I didn't take academics like super serious as I probably should have, and I was more interested in athletics. I played a bunch of sports in high school, primarily just played football, and got to a point where the light bulb came on a little bit more once I got out of high school when I went to community college, and that's when I realized that I actually could achieve more than I probably put myself towards. So, I didn't go through high school just blazing and, taking the highest level courses. Instead, I kind of took a different path, but then once I discovered kind of what I was interested in, what I could do, then I ended up kind of taking off from that point.
What college did you attend?
After high school, I attended Virginia Western Community College for 2 years, and then I ended up transferring to JMU, where I ended up getting actually a marketing degree. Went up to Northern Virginia, worked in private industry for a couple of years, and then realized that I'd always worked with youth through coaching and through other things when I was growing up, and decided to go back and get certified at JMU to teach. And then that's when I got my endorsement in business technology and information systems. And then when I got my job and I was up in Fairfax for a while, I got my master's degree in administration at George Mason University.
So what made you want to be a principal?
I always thought I'd be a teacher. I was a teacher, I was a coach. I loved that. I loved the interaction it was with kids. I just loved, what that energy felt like every day in the classroom. And then at some point, somebody asked me, do you want to get into administration or get a chance where you're able to do things, kind of a different level? And at first I was somewhat apprehensive to that because I really loved what I was doing. And then I thought more about the opportunity, how you can have maybe not as much a direct impact, but you can have a greater impact for a larger number of students. And so that's really why I jumped in. And since then, having that chance to kind of go up the ladder, obviously you start off as assistant principal, you go up to, through the ranks and become an administrator and become a head principal. And it's just, it's just enlightening to me to know that there's so many opportunities to have a direct positive influence on kids.
What are you into now? Like, what are your hobbies? Do you have a family?
Yeah, so I have 2 daughters. I have a high school and middle school age daughters, and got a golden retriever named Bumper. He's like one of my buddies at home. But it's really, obviously, when you have kids, you're into the families. When you have time, this job is consuming a lot in terms of the hours, but spending time with them. Also, just like to be outdoors. I like yard work, like exercise, things of that nature. Just things to stay active, really.
On a more serious note, what are your expectations for the school year?
I think anytime you come in new in a leadership position, the first thing you have to do is really listen and understand where you are. I know because I've lived in this community in the Albemarle High School zone, so to speak, since I moved here 13 years ago. I know what Albemarle High School is, at least from the outside looking in, and I know the great things that happen here each and every day. So my job is to come in really and listen, and I think listening is kind of threefold, really. It's listening to parents and community members, listening to staff, and then getting a chance to listen to students. I think our goal is that We want to build a positive atmosphere for our students. That's first and foremost. But to do that, you also have to make sure that those bridges on those other levels are also strong. And what can we do to make sure that people feel comfortable about the school and feel like that it's a place where their child's thriving? And then from the student's perspective, how are we making sure that they feel the same way? I mean, they come in every day. Now I realize it's school, and some days, it's kind of one of those things you're not really sure if you're excited about going to or not. But how do we make it so the experiences each and every period are valuable and feel like that the students have some ownership to that, and it feels like it's doing something for them to make them feel like they're excelling and growing and hopefully getting prepared for where that next step is once they leave.
Looking from the outside in, working at Western, what are some things that you would like to see Albemarle change for like the better? What are some things you think you could improve at Albemarle?
I think it's probably premature for me to have a running list of the things that I feel are necessary at this point, because maybe there's areas of deficiencies or areas that are not as strong. I think more importantly is there's a lot of areas that are strong. I think one of the things though is how do those areas all work with each other? I don't know many staff, though I already in the opportunity I've had a chance to meet them, that don't come in that work super hard for their kids. I think collectively it's a big school, it's a large staff. How do we make sure we're doing that together in regards to the efficiency of that? I think everybody comes in and does a lot of things, and sometimes we do it in isolation. So one of my goals as a principal, and it's not because I see that it's a fault here, but it's because I think it's important for a staff, is how do you work collaboratively together? Like how do you as earth science teachers work together? How do you as math teachers work together? How do we as departments work together? And certainly the whole school. And you got to be very purposeful, I think, in how you set those situations up to make that happen, because at the end of the day, we're all in it for the same reason, and many of us have the same kids, yet we never get a chance to talk and discuss. So I think just the grassroots effort to kind of bring the staff together for one, and also figure out how we have mechanisms in place to make sure we're talking around student achievement and success to make sure that that works ultimately for the students in the building.
So I know I've seen teachers walk around with the "Together We're Better" shirt on, and I'm sure other students have too. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. So way back in the day when I first got out of college and first started teaching up in Fairfax, I coached a JV basketball team, and I was an assistant coach at the time. And then the coach that was there had this saying that was, "Together we're better." And so I really liked how that was the mantra of that team every time they ended a practice, every time they took the court. And so when that coach left and I took over and coached other teams along the way, I always used that as a bit of a mantra because I think at the end of the day, that is kind of the goal, is that how do you can work great in isolation, and whether that's individually as a student, whether that's individually as a staff member, but if you can figure out how you work better, collaboratively together, you can go further. The old saying is that you can go fast alone, but you can go further together, and the TWB was really something I used back in my coaching days, but I've kind of hung on to it a little bit in some of my mantra of what I believe in. And so we came here as a staff. The very first thing we did on day one, when the teachers got back, is we went to Camp Holiday Trails and did a team retreat, almost of like a team building, bonding kind of experience. And so when the staff first got here, they had the Albemarle shirts that many of you have seen. On the back it says "Together We're Better," and there's really just to make sure that we're always reminding ourselves that this is a tough job. There's lots of things that kind of get in our way and barriers, but at the end of the day, how do we value the things that about who we are, what we believe in, and collectively what we can do together.
What specifically would you like to see from students following through on TWB?
I just think this is such a dynamic and awesome student body that I've had a chance to experience just in a few days here already, and really seeing the value that everybody brings to the table. Because we got over 1,950 students here. Each one is an individual first, and each one brings to the table something unique about themselves. And in many cases we know that because maybe they're on a team, or maybe they're in the arts or in the band or other things, but in many cases we don't. And I think high school's kind of hard, right? There's a lot of things that go into the socialization and just how you navigate through 9 through 12. But I also think how do we understand and appreciate the value of what everyone brings to the table? And I think sometimes that's important, is just to try to understand that more. And so as we are in our classes, we're in the cafeteria, we're on the bus, how do we get a chance to really understand more about who our classmates are? And how do we sometimes branch out amongst, we all have our social circles. How do we branch out more to get to know about other people and somehow figure out how that can be somebody that maybe I haven't had a chance to, get to know, and maybe adds value to my world in some way, or at least makes them feel more welcomed, and creates more of a community. Because I think at the end of the day, this is a really cool, unique community. It's almost like a little small town when you come in here every day. And I really value what everyone brings to the table. And the more we can get a chance to really purposefully do that kind of work and appreciate each other, the stronger we're going to be, collectively. We're going to have disagreements. We're going to have different viewpoints. All that's fine. But at the end of the day, right, we're patriots. And how do we make that a part of really what's the core of who we are?
Last question, and it's very serious to me and a lot of people in the student body.
Okay.
So coming from Western, that's the number one enemy for, or not enemy, rival for Albemarle.
Right.
So how can we tell you're a patriot and not a warrior?
How can you tell I'm a patriot, not a warrior? All right. Well, I think by my actions alone, you'll see that, because you'll see me present in a lot of ways, whether it's in the hallways, where obviously at school, but you'll see me present at events and activities. You won't find anyone rooting any harder for our teams and our competitions in terms of me doing that for Albemarle. And I guess the other side is, if you down to the core, if you pricked my finger, I would bleed red.
Okay. Oh, wow. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, absolutely. Thank you.
I'm Malachi. Thank you for watching Atown Today. See you next time.